Gosh, it was just, that moment, I was so sad. And I was, still hopeful at that point. I had no idea of how long, and thinking that, something could possibly happen, just praying to God and just everything you could possibly imagine. An essential like meltdown, or you just kind of go into a.
Are you hysterical?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a nightmare. You're hoping it's a nightmare.
This is the Fit for Radio podcast. I'm your host, Drew Tiedemann, inside the Stafford Hills Club. And if you ever come and do my show, you'll see it is so pristine and clean in here. You got that saltwater pool. And actually, right when I walk down the hallway, you can see the steam coming up. And I like to start the morning off with a little workout over there in the freshly remodeled gym. And my wife, Amy, she loves the classes. And I think I just got signed up to try the Pilates reformer class here, and I was notified that I might not survive that. So check it out, staffordhills.com, and if you tell them Drew sent you, it will get you half off your initiation. And I was just here last night as well. Such a good time and very relaxing. Hit that hot tub and a little of the old steam room. Right now, though, it is an interview that I've been waiting to do for 15, 16 years, something like that. And it is finally here, an interview with a guy I've known a long time, a man who has a story that most people can, I don't know if you can 100% relate to, because most of us don't go through it. But my guest today is Mike Hessemer. How's it going, bud?
It's going well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm so glad that you're here. Now, you and I actually go way back. We grew up in the same hometown, Lake Oswego, Oregon. And I think a lot of people, once they start to hear this story, will know of it, or it will remind them of a story that kind of rocked the area at the time. Mike, I'm just going to be blunt about it. An incident happened when you were just a young man in your 20s, where you were put on trial for murder.
Correct.
And it was something like I'd never seen before. And we're gonna kind of break down how we got there, what happened thereafter, and where we're at now. And it's really kind of mind-blowing that it is 2026 and that we are sitting in this room right now. And you and I have had many conversations about this conversation. So let's just get into it, all right?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, we grew up in that small town, like we said, a lot of shared childhood experiences, going to the same high school, same friend groups, an easygoing life in the 90s. Actually, I think you grew up, one of your houses you grew up in is just a half a block from my house that I live in now.
Yeah.
It is a tight-knit community. We talk about it on this show. It's an important part of the story because it's also a place where crime rarely happened back then or now. Every story is a headline story. And do you remember the good old days? Do you remember growing up in Lake Oswego where everybody was just packing a car 7 deep, driving around in circles, going to 7-Eleven, riding skateboards, doing the whole downhill thing? You remember those days?
Man, yeah, it was a safe, nice community. People often referred to Lake Oswego as a bubble, and probably still do.
Yeah, it is called the bubble, and that's because it is kind of incubated from the outside environment. I mean, even you just go into Portland proper, it's a different place than it is there. And so I think we all kind of grew up with, I don't know if it's a false sense of security, but definitely not always up on our guard. Now, you and I met way early because I also know your siblings. I know your family. You're from a bigger family. I'm from a bigger family. So I actually was in the same grade as your brother.
Yep.
Your sister, I also went to school with. And, since I have siblings the similar age, it all just kind of, it's a melting pot. And then, of course, when you grew up and I was introduced to you, you and I became pretty fast friends. And you were friends with a lot of my good buddies. And so kind of worked your way in from there, right?
Yeah.
Your brother even lived on my floor at one point when we
That's a
were
true story.
freshmen in college. He lived there until the people who ran the house were like, "We have to stop feeding this guy."
Yeah.
And so we gave him a few more meals, and then he moved on. But you and I also, as we got through school, it's a giant party in college and all that stuff, and then it was like kind of career time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I went into radio and started kind of from the ground up, grinding up the ladder in radio. And you were one of the few people who went like straight to work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, most of our friends had, folks kind of footing the bill for school, and it was just me. I come from a large family, and so I was always working and trying to go to school, and it just, me from working at the skateboard shop, and then that turned into, wow, I can't afford to live like this. So,
Hmm.
and kind of got into sales from there.
Yeah, because I remember you used to work at the skateboard shop across from my work. So like when I'd go get food at the mall, I'd come stop by there, and you were always up there slanging like skate decks and snowboard coats.
Yep.
Which was kind of it fit your personality then as a young guy, though. I mean, you kind of had that easy-go-lucky, catch you with a longboard. You had a little of the old broski in you,
Oh yeah, definitely.
which actually is part of the reason why you were endearing to people and our friends. You know, we would always I always saw you in that light as always smiling, always, just carefree. Um, Mistakes along the way, but still carefree and a good friend to have. Um, Now, as we kind of like started to move on there, um, eventually you leave Eugene and you move back to Portland.
Yeah. Yeah.
When did that go down?
Excuse me. I was about 23 years old, and my mom is going through some, health issues. So I'd moved back to Lake Oswego, just transferred from one car dealership to another one.
Okay, so you're
Yeah.
selling cars
Mhm.
and you're grinding away. You're in the sales lane, which did fit your personality. Um, Now, once you move back, this is the kind of the part of my life where I'm separate from everyone else because I'm in radio and I'm just kind of tied to the tree, kind of, like when you get a radio job, you can't just like roll out. And I wanted to be in Portland, but it was during a Wild West party time
Mhm.
where everybody's out on the weekends, everybody's partying, staying up late, doing the whole thing. And I was kind of the guy who the majority of his friends had moved home or moved to California. And so my life slowed down a little bit. I still partied and I still had a good time, but I was missing the fast lane of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I kind of, and some friends actually went as far as to describe me as boring. And I was like, it's not that boring, but I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think that was a way of saying that safe and responsible, i.e., boring.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the path that we were on. Now, things take a change though, and on one evening now. Um, it's so strange to me because I wasn't there, but I can remember a phone call that came in to me after everything we're about to talk about. And I remember being frozen in time. And I think some people will also be there when it comes to this. Now, this story involves two other individuals, which we're going to leave their names out of it for now because this is your story and they have the right to their privacy and their legacy. And out of respect for families and those people, we're going to be ambiguous with their names. Um, Now, this is something that definitely split a city and a friend group and all that. And it's something that has been worked through over time, and you'll see why. Um, let's start at the beginning of the evening of when everything kind of went down.
Yeah.
What was the plan as you get into that evening, the day of the events?
Gosh, it was the day before the Super Bowl, and guess it was 2008, right before a recession hit,
Hmm.
and we were just kind of in party mode, and it was like, hey, we're have no real plans, and we're just kind of hanging out and
Hmm.
kind of partying leading up to Super Bowl Sunday.
And you guys, do you go out to the bar? Were you at a strip club? Where were you?
Oh man, well, both. Yeah, so we were, kind of at our apartment and then at a bar and a strip club, which is very embarrassing to have to later admit, in a trial.
Yeah, well, young men and ladies, when they're, in the party lane, you end up at these places. It's partially a novelty, but it doesn't it when you're trying to build character in any situation, it's a bit of a tough pill to swallow.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so like even describing this, I'm just thinking in context of my, 23-year-old self and just as we, build this environment, having that in the forefront. This is
Yeah, and
yeah.
I mean, just trying to be completely transparent with you, just because this is why it's important, is it gives you context of the evening. It's like you know those nights, and everybody who's ever partied knows this, is where a night starts to get on and it gets crazier and crazier and kind of takes turns and gets fuzzy at times. But then, the next morning you talk about like, I can't believe we were there or that we did that, even
Yeah.
though it's not your daily character. You don't leave the car dealership to go sit at the rail, but in context of any party,
Yeah,
you could end up there.
exactly.
And that's where you ended up.
Mhm.
Now you guys party, 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 and then you decide that you're going to go after party. What's the plan?
Yeah, at that point we were like, "Hey, let's go back to our apartment complex." We go over to my place and just kind of hang out
Hmm.
and party a little bit longer, probably, eventually go to bed and then it's Super Bowl Sunday and then probably wake up with a headache and
And
yeah,
do it all over
yeah.
again. So while you're over there, you guys at some point you decide that you're going to take a trip to. So you're at a big apartment complex that's well known in the town, sits way up at the top of the hill there on
Mhm.
the backside near Portland.
Yeah.
Um, Now you guys decide you're going to go to the hot tub.
Yeah.
So what? Walk me through it.
Well, I mean, it's hard to even walk you through all this because by this time we are just,
Blotto.
just completely obliterated. And,
It would be a better idea to go to bed.
exactly at this point we're, browned or blacked out. And, the idea is let's go get in the hot tub. And it's just,
And I feel like a hot tub is already a bit of a recipe for disaster because if you've had a couple drinks, you get in there, it's like a crock pot. It makes me dizzy and not feel good.
exactly. I mean, you later on find out the effects of hot tubs when you encounter a situation like this, hyperthermia, especially if you get in a hot tub that you don't know is like 108.
Hmm.
So,
So you guys get in the hot tub, and it's you and two other of our friends. So they're not just like random people; they're friends. Everybody showed up together as buds.
yep.
At one point, it's just you and one other friend in the hot tub, and from what I gather, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you say whatever, whenever, but you guys get in like a water chopping fight,
Yeah.
like what you know when you're in a pool and like your brother's smacking the water and it's shooting it up into your face. Is that what you're doing?
Exactly. That's what appears to be going on, later on.
Because there is a
Looking at
surveillance camera.
Yeah, later on. So, at this point, I have just, my memory due to, just being, intoxicated or maybe even trauma at this point now as I'm, understanding more about PTSD. But yeah, it appeared just to be, just a like a water, splashing, like you're in the water with your brothers and sisters splashing back and forth.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the reason why I do have some insight into that is I have seen this video, and we'll get to how that's even possible. But i- it's it's just it's context that what starts off as quite innocent kind of back and forth eventually leads to, what would you describe it as, like when you see the video? Is it a wrestling match? Is it, what exactly is going on from what you're seeing?
From my perspective, knowing, me and just the spirit of the night, yeah, it just turned into like a horseplay wrestling match.
Hmm.
You know?
And those things can kind of escalate in a hot tub too, because it's not like, so if I'm wrestling with you in the hallway, it's all very temperature controlled.
Mm.
Where you're in a hot tub, I just feel like, and everybody's been using whatever they've been using to be up all night. They're all juiced already.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have, what are your memories from in that moment of, because in the video it almost looks like a jet wash, like almost like somebody turned the bubbles on, because it's 2008. The cameras aren't necessarily like they are now. Like from when I was watching it, like it's not like ultra HD.
Yeah.
So what do you remember? Because from what I gather is there's this scuffle, and that at some point the two of you separate.
Correct. Yeah. The memory of that is just, for me, is gone, but just knowing,
What
seeing
you know
the video,
after the fact.
yeah, after the fact is, it stopped. I think that if you're overheating, two people are overheating that are highly intoxicated, and it was just like, whoa, and a separation.
Yeah.
And of like, wow, let's, both of us are feeling, a little bit woozy here, and, let's go to, opposite sides, self-preservation mode of like, wow, let's,
Take a breath
yeah.
here. And that's what I remember, as I remember you two separating and basically to two separate sides of the hot tub.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, though, it almost feels like you're falling asleep or something. What do you, when you see the video, what do you see that next part as?
Gosh, I see myself. I also see our friends on the couch at 5 in the morning, where they're in that, like, head nod mode, where they're half awake, half asleep, falling asleep, getting ready to essentially pass out. And and that's what I see, and that's what I know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And at some point, the other man in the tub goes under the water.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm guessing the both of you are feeling similar, exhausted, nodding off. And whereas you're still somewhat coherent, he goes down.
Correct.
And so as he goes down into the water, it seems to me that you're still oblivious to it at first. Like that when he goes under there.
Yeah.
At what point do you realize he's under the water, or do you, and what happens next?
What happens next is I have no idea, perception of what's, ahead of me, and what's even happening. And, just see myself. There's even, bubbles, being blown, in the video, if you watch. So, there's me nodding out, falling in there. And then in the video, it shows me pulling myself out, and just kind of crawling away, which showing that
you're equally exhausted at this point.
Exactly. And just passing out. My next memory is like
So you fall asleep there.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the concrete for like, it was off camera, or partially off of camera, for it was almost like, I don't know, gosh, 10 minutes of laying there.
Okay.
And my next memory is my first memory of, of any kind of like sobering event.
It just kind of shocks you back into the world.
The cold, yeah, I just remember the cold concrete in that indoor pool hot tub area, and just jolted back to reality, and seeing your friend, the person that you're just having a good time with, under, and having no concept of time or perception of anything, going into like panic mode.
So when you panic, what do you do? Because this is a critical moment in what will end up being a trial for your freedom.
Yeah.
What happened once you're here?
Well, once I'm in that very moment, it's he's under, get to him, jump in out of the water, jump in, pull him out. No idea how long he'd been under, and then screaming for help, trying to pull him out. I remember that, and eventually getting him out, screaming for help, and call 911. We need help, and then trying any kind of memory of what CPR looks like. And that's when our other friend, who wasn't, had stepped out with another person we were hanging out with that night, had, kind of come in to assist. Yeah.
Hmm. Wait, can I back you up for a second? And am I incorrect? And wasn't there a point where you walked outside the door? Did you ever walk out and back in?
To get the door for,
And that's the only time you walked out.
yeah,
Okay. Because I think a lot of people are under the perception that you left the facility and returned.
no,
Is that's incorrect?
that's incorrect.
Okay. And then I think that's good to have clarity there.
Yeah.
And it's also worth pointing out, if you watch this video on YouTube, you're looking at you and you're like, well, you just pull somebody straight out. But there's like 30 pounds of pure muscle on your body now that was not there in 2008.
Oh, at that point, just to put things in perspective, I was like 150 pounds, maybe
150 if you've, on your heaviest days, really.
on my heaviest days. I mean,
Yeah.
and so that's probably like 10 pounds of like beer pudge on me, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say your fighting weight would be like 125 if you were cutting.
Exactly. Yeah, wrestling weight, it would have been way less. And
But when you look at what happens with you, this muscle comes on. So
40 pounds later.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's the Fit for Radio podcast, and it's brought to you by the Stafford Hills Club, ranked the #1 health and wellness facility in the Portland area. And when you get here, you can tell exactly why that is. They've got this quality saltwater pool surrounded by chairs and a little grilling spot outside ready for spring and summer. And you want to get in here, get yourself a family membership, an amazing kids club, and they actually cap those memberships so that you don't have to be searching for a chair all summer when you're out at the pool. You have room to enjoy your membership at Stafford Hills, where they have the premium indoor and outdoor tennis, the high quality workout facility upstairs, great classes, and so much more. So where you just want to pump some iron, maybe you want to go read a book by the fire. It's all here at Stafford Hills. Check it out today, staffordhills.com. So now that we're clear that you only get up and go over there to get the door for our other friend, what happens when he gets in there?
Call 911. Mind you, this is a long time ago. My memory's really choppy of that moment, but it was panic mode. Get your friend help at this point.
And so he's been pulled out of the water at this point.
Correct. Yeah. And we're trying CPR. We're doing everything we can. We're waiting for the paramedics.
And so as you're trying and it's not successful, and at this point you're also a little hazy on how long it's been because you also passed out.
No idea. No idea.
I mean, it could be a long time, it could be a couple minutes, it could be anything.
Yeah. You're hopeful it's a couple minutes, but yeah, it's the worst possible scenario, your worst nightmare, and first introduction of the frailty of our existence.
Exactly. And, life is just about the thinnest of margins. And, I've known you forever. And so it's different for me in this interview because I know what is in your heart and what kind of person you are. And so it just doesn't make any sense to me that the narrative could be written that it was malicious or there was intent, because that's who plans it that way, right?
No.
That's not normal behavior. And I knew that you and him were friends.
Yeah.
So it wasn't making any sense on that level. I want to ask you, as he's laying there and you guys are trying and you've notified the authorities and they're on the way, the human in you, not just I want to know, obviously, the compassion part. I know we've discussed that many times about how you feel about the incident and everything, but what's going through your mind, like as a human being? And there has to be an element of self-preservation and fear of the unknown, or were you still just locked into the moment? What was going through your head as you waited for help?
I gosh, it was just, that moment. I was so sad. And I was, still hopeful at that point. I had no idea of how long. And thinking that, something could possibly happen, just praying to God and just everything you could possibly imagine, an essential like meltdown, where you just kind of go into a,
Are you hysterical?
absolutely. I mean, you you can never prepare yourself for a moment like that, and then to be confused, and then to like be around your first, the first person that you've known that has passed away that close and in proximity. And it's there's nothing you can do to prepare yourself for
Mhm.
that moment. This person that like a friend, you love this friend, and a person that you've been with all night, and all of a sudden it's a nightmare. You're hoping it's a nightmare.
Mhm. And it's the worst scenario you could be in, especially when it takes place in a part where you don't have all of your memories. Like, because the confusion of it as well, you don't know exactly what's happening. Like there is surveillance and stuff now to kind of walk back on, but you know, walk me through it. Like who gets there first? Police, fire, ambulance?
Yeah,
What happens?
fire paramedics show up first. I'm holding the door open so they can, get through. They go in there, and they're doing everything they can to assess the situation and help. Police show up, and start looking. They're asking me what happened. I have no idea. I'm saying, there's security cameras, you can go look at them,
Mhm.
and offering that, like, I have no idea, but if you want to know, you
It's
can.
going to be on there.
It's going to be on there. And whatever, trying to be helpful in any kind of way, but also it just, devastated,
Mhm.
as
Unable to truly communicate and like sit down and have a conversation.
exactly, those moments where you sober up instantly, but you're still being affected by,
Mhm.
everything.
And now is it turning to morning? Is it still dark?
It's like 5 or 6
So
probably.
the sun is coming
Yeah,
up
it's starting to get light at this point. Yeah.
and it's kind of like a dawn is breaking on a whole different chapter of a lot of our lives, yours in particular, obviously the other guys who were there because this is it took one guy who was laying there like how long did they work on him?
I
You don't know.
no concept of
Did they
time.
take you guys away from him, or
Yeah, I think, our friend was probably, still, there, but I had initially let him in, so they had us out in the lobby, I think, or at
okay?
least, me. I'm not sure if he was out there also.
And you know, at some point they come to the realization that they're not going to be able to save him.
Yeah.
And did they relay that to you immediately?
Yeah, I could hear them kinda coming down the hallway and saying it, and I was just, more kind of
Mortified.
mortified, hysterical at that point, and just crying, and, thinking about his family at that point, and just any any person's, just the fallout of that, and the gravity of the situation was just, starting to sink in, but you can't prepare, or brace yourself for that.
And you know, you didn't know this when you got up in the morning and you got ready and you got dressed, but you never get to go home after the incident.
Well, actually,
Or do they? Do you?
the police initially watched the video, and were just, the impression was horrible accident, man. Like, go home. We'll ask you more questions, later. And so
Oh, they'd sent you home
they sent me to my apartment, that same apartment complex. So I went home, and just, went
upside down.
upside down, just went right in my room, couldn't call anybody, couldn't think, couldn't, yeah.
How long were you home before they came back?
Um, Probably like, no real concept, maybe like an hour or
Oh,
something.
so they don't leave for long.
No, they're there, and a district attorney had come in, and
Overruled everything.
yeah, and said, "Hey, we should, go talk to this guy."
Hmm. So they come to your apartment and they question you there
Yeah, they said, "Hey, we'd like to ask you some more questions, kind of the quintessential. We need you to, kind of come downtown."
and give us a statement.
Yeah, correct.
So did they come pick you up? Were you allowed to drive down yourself, or how was that?
They picked me up, but it wasn't like you're under arrest or anything like that. It was,
Okay.
pick you up, take you to the hospital to see if you have, I don't know,
Injuries
injuries and get your blood and urine and things like
and
that.
the whole deal, because they wanted to know everything that was happening. And that's what happens when somebody passes away. The rules change completely. Like if the person survives, they can round the edges a little bit, but when somebody dies, I feel like it really turns things up a notch.
Yeah, correct.
So they take you to the hospital, they get all those things, and then where do you go from there?
Um, from the hospital, they took me to county jail.
And that's where they book you or they question you, or so like
They
when do they tell you they're going to charge you with something?
Well, after they took my blood and urine, they started asking me questions about, what's in the blood, what's in the urine. And that's, when I kind of went into like a self-preservation mode, was like, hey, do I need an attorney?
Oh,
Not wanting to admit of the recreation things we were,
because you guys were drinking and doing drugs.
correct.
And at the time, you're like, you just figured that would change everything.
I don't even know. I just,
Do you think looking back on it, that was a good decision or a bad decision? And I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either, but I think it was a bad decision because,
Then they
full,
turned,
full transparency is the name of the, as you go into a trial.
And if you were fully transparent, then maybe they would have charged you with something less. But instead, they went for the full Monty. I mean,
Yeah, at first they charged me with manslaughter in the second degree.
and then they have the ability to change that.
They have the ability to go to a grand jury and present whatever evidence they feel they want to a
Mhm.
grand jury. Even if they don't have a full discovery, they can present key things to
Yeah.
kind of persuade a charge maybe up from the charge that they are really going for. And that's my opinion of what happened here.
They take a swing for a home run and hope to get a ground rule double.
The reason for a plea bargain, correct?
Yeah, to get you to come off of it. Now, when when you find out that they're going to charge you with murder, that had to have been a devastating blow.
Oh man, I wasn't ready for it, and to just know the falseness of that accusation and the actual charge coming against you,
Mhm.
and the gravity of, wow, not only is this not true, and a misrepresentation of what actually happened, but it's also the rest of my life at on the line.
And it also, going back to this town that you're from, it becomes the headline. First murder trial in 30 years or whatever it was in Lake Oswego. I mean, it was like this long gap before that came up. And then, it's in gossip circles. The, you know, the guy who passed away, who was a friend of mine, he was also really good friends with my friends, and so this was so divisive, as in, we've lost a loved one. And so when that happened, it also caused all kinds of different rifts, because it was kind of like, who's taking whose side here? And what you come to find out is that when bad things happen and when a stigma gets put on somebody, like what happened to you, people turn their heads and bury them in the sand.
Correct. Yeah, that you learn a lot about people when something like this happens.
Because
And
most people don't want to tarnish or touch tarnished goods.
exactly. And I also learned a lot about expectations in myself. Do I have an expectation for these people to try to preserve themselves, just doing what they have a natural instinct to do? So
Mhm.
I could have like a stance of, like, oh, I can't believe that they didn't step up to the plate the way that I expect them to. But really, they're just doing the best they can.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And, and I have known you for a long time, and you and I have talked at great length, and you'll find out exactly how that comes about here. But I've always thought it was commendable that you've never blamed anybody else. You've never thrown hate or venom towards those who turn their heads on you. You always took responsibility for the moment, in the capacity that it should be, not in the capacity that they tried to paint you in.
Correct.
but I always thought that that had grace in it amongst the situation that you were put in because you're in your early 20s. Your entire life is in front of you. And the next time I see you, I come to visit you in county jail, I believe it was. Do you remember that?
The black and white stripes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it frightened me. I came in there and
Horrifying.
my first of quite a few times through a metal detector or whatever to come. Actually, I didn't metal detect there because you were behind plexiglass.
Correct. Yeah.
But I was there with a bunch of other people who I just didn't expect, you or me to be in there.
No, it's a fish out of water, and
Mhm.
and when you tell people where you're from in there, it's like a joke, and you
Yeah,
have to be okay with the joke and not let them kind of walk on you. And you're in a completely different environment with people that you would never ever be around, by choice.
absolutely. Now, this is interesting to me, and I don't think I've ever talked to you about this, but you're in there and you're trying to like reach out or whatever and get a hold of somebody, at least a comrade or a friend or a support group or something, right? Because you're all alone.
Yeah,
And at some point, you called me. And I can remember, this is many years ago, but I can remember the collect call thing that pops up on the phone and basically gives you the option to accept something from a call from a prisoner.
yeah,
And obviously I didn't have a long list of people who that might be.
yeah.
And so I accept the call. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, I remember every moment, that it's a echo chamber fishbowl of a unit, and it's all, people that are being accused of extremely, violent crimes. So you only have a window of time to, 15 minutes to talk on the phone or something like that. And you're looking around. I remember when someone finally accepted, and I was like, are you serious? The surprise and the, kind of the joy that there's a world bigger than this, fishbowl.
Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, if I was in your position and the phone's ringing and then it's like declined, like it just would speak volumes to who I am because I know you, and I've known you for so long that in my mind the narrative that was being written just did not fit. And I hadn't seen any video. I was taking you 100% at your word.
Yeah, and that that's an amazing quality that I think you have. You're a good friend, kind of like no matter what. I'm not trying to blow you up, but that is like the what those examples those examples is my friend a good friend or not?
Mhm.
Having that moment where you can say you'd show up, but is there an example of it?
Yeah.
And when you picked up that phone call, it was wow. There's at least someone will talk to me. You think that of all the people that are just don't want to be touched by it. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah,
And I remember I drive up at the time. I don't live here. I live in Eugene, Oregon. And I drive up here to come see you. And so I got to go stay at my parents' house. And I told them straight away because you got to think, even from their perspective, they're hearing these rumors all over town. Now I'm driving to town to go sit with the guy. And I just told them straight away, I was like, to me, this is what's right. And this is what I have to do is I'm going to go see him and I'll be able to look into his eyes and I'll know if this is true or not,
yeah,
and I knew the second I walked in there, I knew before I got there, I probably wouldn't have driven all the way up. I knew that it was not what they were saying that it was. Um, and it was at a time, even in 2008, it wasn't like you could just like articles on articles and articles. It's like all very ambiguous stuff. I hated seeing you behind the plexiglass. You were still, you weren't, because I saw you later on because what they do in these situations is they sit and they milk you out there for a while to try and get that plea or to try and get it. And I mean, and you're in that fishbowl. It's probably hard to stay steadfast.
you have a new person generally almost at least once a week in there with you, a two-person thing, and it's a waiting game. Yeah, they want to ride you out for a year or 2 years while you wait for trial and see if it kind of essentially breaks you until you can
Hmm.
get to that. And I don't think it takes that long to prepare for a trial. Maybe I'm
Yeah. So from the day that you were arrested to the time that you actually got a chance to defend yourself in court, how much time had passed?
Over a year.
Over a year.
Over a year of sitting in they're pretty bad conditions in that county jail. I mean, you have this like 2-person shower area with a tray slot, and that's where you get your food. So no one can be showering when you get your food. And it's just, it's pretty bad.
Yeah. And you actually faced conditions in a couple of different facilities, but how would you rank that amongst different places? Is that as bad as prison? Is it worse?
Worse.
It's worse.
Well, no, I mean, it's probably safer than prison. You're not like as much danger physically. You could be, but you're not.
People still have the opportunity to get out there.
Yeah, less weapons, less time. With dangerous people. But
yeah, but still a very sketchy environment. And for a guy who's this is like snowboard skate, Mike. Like this is like this. Your eyes at first must have just been like almost like silver dollars.
Oh, horrified. I mean, and then to know that, okay, like what are the statistics of someone like winning a trial, like coming to terms with like, hey, I could do, a long time in there. And then how am I going to survive? You're a guy and you're like, all of us guys think of that scenario. Are you going to survive this situation, or could you survive in this situation? And I, I was a, smaller, average guy going, oh, wow. I'm in danger. Not am I in danger, but I'm in danger. Like, am I going to be able to protect myself? And how am I going to do that?
And I remember in the lead up ahead of this, and I've told you this before, but you might not remember. I actually got a visit from a couple of detectives who drove all the way down to Eugene and met me at a Starbucks. And they wanted to get to the bottom of your story. And they really wanted me to just give up on my angle, which is Mike's a good person. That's not possible. X, Y, and Z. I'm just laying it out the way that it's supposed to be laid out. So much, in fact, that one of the detectives, this is a tight-knit community, I sang in an elite choir with in high school. And so he's not like truly involved because it's kind of a conflict. So I'm talking to the other guy, and I did not give them what they wanted. I don't think I wasn't holding anything back, but I just was saying what it is that I feel about you. And I think part of the reason they came to talk to me is because my name appeared on a sheet that said that I was going to arrive at your trial.
Yeah, as a character witness, which is, they get that, we get a list of the people that they're gonna put on the stand, and it just goes both ways. So.
Now, for a character witness, obviously I don't testify on the facts of the trial. I testify on your character. Did you ask anyone else to do this for you, or at this point had nobody answered the call, or what was the deal?
Yeah. So, no one really would. And that, but I did have like a childhood, like youth group leader guy that I'd known when I lived in Lake Oswego. And then when my dad moved to Hawaii, I spent some time with him over in Maui, and he was willing to speak on my behalf. And my character, he's known me since I was a kid. You've known me since I was a kid. And really people aren't knocking your door down to say anything nice about you, especially when there's allegations.
They don't want to be associated.
No. And even if they don't believe it, I mean, or whatever their stance is, it's just, I don't want to be touched by this. I think that I would, but it's hard to say until you're put in that situation. So.
And what people don't know also is when you walk into a trial, it's almost like a wedding. You've got like the bride side and the groom side. You've got the defendant and the victim. And then it was just so weird because I go in and I sit on your side, and then all these people who are my friends are sitting, either the ones who can't get their mind made up are sitting in the middle, the bench that goes across the middle, like dead in the center because they don't know what to do, or they're sitting on the other side, which is, and I'm just like, I hate that it's divided, and I'm like, I'm not here to say one over the other. I just want to, let's just get back down to brass tacks.
What's true?
Yeah, exactly. Let's just bring out the truth. You're listening to the Fit for Radio podcast. And of course, it's brought to you by the Stafford Hills Club, which is everything you need in a workout facility. It's also a place to make friends and build a family here as you are stronger, smarter, and just more mobile together at Stafford Hills, a beautiful kids club that you can trust with your kids. I do it myself while I work out, and it's peace of mind the whole time. Also, get here and get that membership lined up before the summer months hit and you're out there tanning those buns by the pool, enjoying the grill and so much more. They've got you dialed in at Stafford Hills. Check out all of the amenities for you at staffordhills.com. Now, when we're at the trial, I got a chance to see you again, and now you've been hidden away from the sun for so long that I remember thinking, because you were always like tan, like you always had like at least like kind of an olive complexion.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, God, not necessarily sick, but that sickly kind of look. And then I'm trying to think that did I see you in the hallway ahead of time? Because I thought I saw you because they let you put your nice clothes on, but I could have sworn I saw you in the prison outfit ahead of time. But it's been so long, I don't know if I dreamed that part
No, they get you
into like a back room, right?
yeah, so they wake you up, around 4 in the morning, and then they like bring you into this like cold tank, and you're wearing these like, striped kind of
Yeah.
canvas stuff, and they get you changed, and then they bring you over in shackles, and then they let you get changed, and then you put your shackles back on, and then go to the holding tank, and then you go to your trial, which they had like a taser on me.
Oh, so it could zap you.
Yeah, there's some officer my whole trial with like a thing on his.
You're wearing a taser the whole time?
It was there was one that was around my waist, and then there was one on like my ankle. And
Wow, no running.
I asked for the ankle one. And it was really odd the way the trial set up. You think that we're talking about the families on opposite sides, but you have the district attorney and us sitting at the same table. So I'm like rubbing elbows with the guy that's trying to put me away forever. And then I have a taser on my foot, and like an officer, like, like winking at me, or, kind of like making jokes about, the thing goes off for 8 seconds. And he goes, "You don't want to ride the bull,"
Oh
It's
my
like,
God. And you're like, how am I here?
yeah,
You never get used to it, I'm guessing, like the shackles and all that. Did it ever get to where that wasn't a big deal? Because the first time they put those on you, you're probably like, oh my God.
yeah. The shackles, I mean,
The ankle ones are the ones that get to me.
they do. And then when you actually get transported to prison, they put what's called a black box on you. So it's like a shackle on a shackle that like connects your like feet to your hands. So, and then you ride for like 3 hours on a.
Is that ceremonious? Like why then are you at more risk than any other time?
It's transporting any,
They just take it
prisoner.
all the
They
way.
take it serious. Yeah.
So during this trial, I'm only there for one day, so like the day that I'm invited to testify is also a day, and I don't know how many times they showed it, but it's the day they showed the hot tub camera.
Mhm.
And so that was the first time that I had actually seen the footage. And it was interesting to me. I was glad because I saw the footage and then it was my turn to go up so that I could at least be like, okay, well, that backs up what he said to me,
Yeah.
and it matches that. And you never said that you never denied that, you have a part in the situation.
Oh, yeah. I knew that. Yeah. I was where I shouldn't be doing what I shouldn't be doing,
Led to the death of a man.
and yeah, my friend, if we weren't doing what we were doing, my friend would still, yeah.
He'd still be here. And kind of the letter of the law at the lower crime kind of reads like that, whereas in the murder thing, just I could not and would not say no to coming there to fight against that.
No intent, I've never had intent to hurt somebody. I mean, yeah. So
Yeah. And so when I get there, I see your grandparents and, I see your family and stuff, and I'm motivated. I would say that. It was a different situation for me because that's the first and only time that I've testified at something like that. But I knew how important it was. And when I got my chance to go up there to defend you, I guess I was under the impression that I would be able to speak. And the district attorney was trying desperately to not let me finish my sentences or get to, as soon as it would turn positive about you, he would just like smack, like try an objection.
Yeah.
And so at a point during this, I decided that if I come off of this thing and I don't get the words out, why did I even come up here?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of turned and kind of ignored a few of those objections and just kind of kept talking. And I remember him being agitated that I had spoken up for you out of turn. But it's one of those things where he's not going to hold me in contempt for telling the jury that you're a good person and that you're a compassionate guy, and I'm at least I didn't think so.
You probably could have. And that's what, it meant so much to me.
And maybe my ignorance helped you there, because I was not. I mean, and if they were gonna charge me for saying that you're a good person, then light me up, dude.
Yeah.
Go right ahead. And they did not. He was agitated, but I came off the stand. I had accomplished my goal, and that was just to reiterate. I was hoping that they would see a good person on the stand who is just telling you about another good person who had a bad thing happen to them, and a bad thing that happened for everyone involved. Nobody comes out clean in the scenario, and that's not lost on me or you. Afterwards, though, your grandparents came up to me, and I think it was your grandpa. He's like, nobody has been able to get a word in with that guy in there until you did, and he gave me a big old hug, and it just meant the world. It was like, I'll drive up here every day.
You're probably the first man that's hugged that guy's hugged in like 50 years.
It was pretty nice. And, those, it's those types of things that, I remember that more than I remember a lot of things, because that day was wild for me. And that's just one day in this experience that you're going through.
I would say that's, maybe the day that you took the stand was maybe one of the most important days of like the future of my life, where I'm sitting right now,
because if you get convicted of murder, you could spend the rest of your life there.
Yeah. The opinion of three or, your jury of 12 people, my whole life, it was sitting right there. And then, knowing this, district attorney is just, so good. I mean, his job is to
crush,
to get a conviction, no matter what. And so I remember you asking yourself questions and answering them up there. I don't remember exactly what you said, but like,
I love the transcript.
Yeah, I would love it. I have it. It's huge, but
that's
we'll
amazing
someday. But yeah, I think, I'm dressing my daughters this morning. I'm thinking, about to come in here. I'm thinking about that moment. That moment doesn't happen. Maybe my daughters don't happen. And, and that's just that's the world to me. I think about that moment probably like once a week. I've told people that story a lot of times, but that was probably in my trial, when people were like, wow, maybe this guy didn't, brutally do something intentionally, but it was just, reckless behavior that led up to a horrific accident. That's what I felt was like the kind of like a pivotal point. Yeah.
Well, that means the world to me, and you know that. And we've talked about this at great length, because right at this moment, there's a couple options on the table. They can convict you of murder, they can convict you of manslaughter, or they can send you home, right?
Yeah.
And what if any hope did you have of going home?
I really didn't, I mean, maybe if it was what I, probably I thought it was at best maybe going to be criminally negligent homicide is what the jury, with the evidence that was presented, maybe they could,
And that wouldn't be a mandatory minimum?
No, not a mandatory minimum. And, I might have done some time and then, kind of probation. And then I was like, yeah, if they get into the weeds a little bit, it could be manslaughter. And then I was like, there's no way it's going to be murder. I didn't feel it. And then I was willing to stand up for that. That was, I don't know if the district attorney offered me plea deals, and I just said no, because I want to take it to them. I didn't want it.
Yeah, you don't want it, and then it's forever. Well, he did do it, but then he saved himself. Like, no, I want them to say it, that I did not do that intentionally, and that it's just the course of actions. So when it comes down Is it just like the movies? They stand you up, you take a deep breath. How do they read this verdict?
Yeah, so just like the movies. I mean, I'm sitting there, you zoom out of your body kind of thing. The hot adrenaline washes over your body,
It's all down to this moment.
and it's all down to this very moment. The jury finds the defendant, not guilty. Bam, and just like the relief of like a cold wash over that hot adrenaline. And
Mhm.
then they said for, the lesser included crime, which, the process of them determining what that is, debate in itself. But they said manslaughter in the first degree and hit that gavel. I knew exactly that meant 10 years,
And you'd already been locked up for one, so that meant you had 9 more to do.
9 more to do.
And do they tell you straight away where you're going?
No, no idea. They take you to a place to classify you by age, by
To make you a warrant of the state, or like they own you at that point.
at that point, yeah, they're like, okay, can we get information from this person? Do we need to keep him separate from somebody? Is he a younger guy? Is he affiliated with gangs?
Checking you for tattoos and
Yeah,
all that.
yeah, strip you naked. Check.
Because it's all very brutal on, like the psyche too, with like the getting naked and cavity searches and all that stuff. And we are going to have you on again to discuss some of the other aspects of a standard issue human going into a prison, because there is so much. This podcast would be 3.5 hours long
Oh yeah,
if
yeah.
we got into all that. So we are going to do another episode, and the reason why that's even possible is where they decide to send you. Now, how long do you lay in wait before you get told where? Because you know how long,
Yeah,
you just don't know where.
exactly. So you're there for like it's actually the women's facility. And they also have like a section for intake where they, classify each
Okay.
man, and they send them from, right up the road here to whatever facility in Oregon after they classify them. So
All right. And then so once you were classified, you were sent where?
to Pendleton.
Pendleton.
Yeah, EOCI.
Now, that is a maximum security prison,
Like medium max.
Medium?
It does have maximum aspects to it.
but it's medium max.
But it's like where, it's where like in the movies has the prison yard, because like the max you're like locked down in in a box for 23 hours a day, let out into a cage with no contact with anybody.
Because you got a little bit more Shawshanky going on there, where you can go out in the yard
Exactly.
and do the whole thing. Now, when you get there, they transport you in the aggressive way and the whole deal. And is there a shock entry type thing where they bring you in and the warden comes and tells you that life's over? Or how does that intake roll?
Yeah. So you get brought, it's like a 3-hour drive, or 4-hour drive or whatever it is, and you're
Into the middle of nowhere.
in the middle of nowhere. It's freezing cold, and you're wearing this aggressive shackle system. So your hands hurt, you're cold, you got to use the restroom, all the things. By the time you get there, you're just like trying to, get to the, unshackled to a toilet or something. Got to pee, and once you get there, I want to say that it wasn't, this like, the warden comes out with a shotgun,
Yeah.
it wasn't like that. But
You're in my house now.
but there was a situation kind of like that. There had been a, recent fight. So the guard had a guy in handcuffs with his hands like above his head, and he was bleeding out of his face, with the nurse trying to hold like gauze underneath him, like going to the infirmary as we're being intaked with like,
Oh my gosh. You're like, where am I?
oh yeah, I was like, okay, it is what, a little bit at least what they say it might be.
And you're still a pretty little guy here. When you're in county, you're not. Do you have access to weights?
No, but I mean, I got into, a regiment, so I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to be able to maybe defend myself.
So you start doing push-ups and stuff in a cell, or what were you doing?
Like Navy SEAL burpees and push-ups and just anything that it could keep me busy. I was reading. I had, amazing support system of people sending me books, but yeah.
Yeah, I know for a fact, just because I am this type of a creature, that I would live on the ground doing push-ups. I'd be like hanging from the bottom of my bunk, trying to strengthen my arms, like anything to try and not be so little. Because at the same time, I haven't really started my fitness journey. You and I are both little guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still a pretty little guy in general. We didn't get any taller, but just didn't have the strength.
Yeah, I did not have the strength and like knew that I might need it. So I was like, okay,
Mhm.
I am in self-preservation mode, God give me the strength to just get, buff enough to defend myself or
Yeah.
whatever I might need to do.
And you need that muscle yesterday
Yeah,
because you're now here.
exactly. Here I am. And
Mhm.
I know they have weights here and all that, but I'm like, am I even allowed to use them?
Yeah. What are the rules? I mean,
Yeah,
you're just kind of a fish out of water at this point.
yeah.
Um, Now, early on in your stay there, eventually you start getting access to like being able to make calls and get, you know, time on your books and money on your books and all that. So you and I actually we don't break communication. We continue to have a dialogue now that you're kind of settled in to a new spot.
Yeah, yeah, we talk pretty often. I mean,
A couple times a week for the length of however along it would let you talk and then eventually it would say like, all right, you two shut up. And
yeah.
that would be, you're running out of time.
You have 1 minute remaining in
Yeah.
the call.
Wrap it up.
Yeah. Pretty much.
So when you were on the phone, is that like the movies? Are you like out in a hallway on a phone or
Oh,
where?
yeah. No, like, I'd
And are
be
people like, get off the phone?
exactly. I'd
Trying
be
to
on
come
the
up, blah,
yard
blah, blah.
exactly. You got some dude tapping his foot, looking at you all crazy, and you're like, "Dude, look at that guy. He's been on twice," you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I remember those calls, and it was a strange time for everyone involved because what I would do is you would call, and so I would take the call and I would go out on my back porch, and Amy, my wife, would be there, and my roommate at the time, and they just knew I was just going to go out and I was going to talk to you till the lady on the phone told me one more minute, and that would be that, and that was just kind of part of life and part of a routine, and there were a few times where I couldn't answer, but most of the time I was able to we had a deal with if you call me at this time, then I can answer your calls.
Yeah. No, that was, I think that was key to, the psychological survival
It
of
keeps you grounded in your reality too, like that you and I can still I could also update you on people and things and you'd be like, "Well, what's so and so doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, blah 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 blah." And so you're not disconnected and part of that why I think that helps is it kept one foot in reality that outside of these walls and outside of a bunch of tear gas and threats is a home and is like there's an ecosystem for me out of here. I just have to get through this.
exactly. So it's a constant, fight of I just got to get through this, and then an acceptance of I can be worthy of a life better than what's being portrayed in here or what these dudes are glorifying.
And you were there because you get this 10-year thing. Like when I get the phone call about the incident, I still live in my apartment over by the karaoke bar where we all used to hang out. Like
Oh,
it's
wow.
that long ago. I remember standing in the room taking the call, just dumbfounded, like staring at my broken AC unit in the wall, just like, uh and then you fast forward my entire time I owned my house in Eugene and then even like moving to Portland, like it's like a whole process right in that time. And it was so long. But I also want to say that it was mutually beneficial for me as well as for you, because I know I was a lifeline, but also during that time I've hinted at it and we'll do a show on it. But I was sick for 3 years. I call it I joke around and I call it the 1,000 days of sadness. It's just because I was so sick all the time. Mystery diagnosis. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. And you would listen to me talk about what I'm going through and it was ambiguous because I didn't necessarily know, but you would hear me out and I would hear you out about what you were going through. It's like nobody else wanted to hear our whining or our issues, but we could kind of push that back and forth.
Hmm.
And during that time, that allowed us to build our friendship to more than just bar buddies. And I always cared about you. I'd pick you up in the dead of night, but like most grown men do not talk on the phone for 2 hours twice a week.
Yeah,
They just don't.
they don't. Or talking about, hey, I'm worried about this, or
Yeah, real life
yeah,
stuff.
yep,
And I didn't know, I didn't know what my future looked like, because I was dating Amy, but I was sick for 3 years. I was damaged goods. You didn't know what your future looked like. You're all alone in a cold bunk. It's like we needed each other.
yeah,
And so I don't want it to seem like I just helped you, because you helped me too.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear, and the solidification of a friendship through like a symbiotic thing is good to hear because I feel a lot of times like, hey man, I was taking a lot. I don't feel that you feel that I owe you anything, but I know that it's just good to hear that hey man, we're helping each other out, sharpening each other.
100%. And honestly, your gripes held more water than mine because my tummy hurts. I get sick and dizzy. And yours were, yeah, a guy beat the blood and crap out of somebody in the mess hall, and then they shot us with tear gas, and I'm kind of burning up in the eyes right now. That's a tougher day than what I'm going through. And so I think a lot of times you would put me into perspective to where, yeah, I am going through the toughest time of my life physically, but I'm also not going through what you're going through.
Yeah.
So it gave me some perspective. You spend a lot of time there in Pendleton. Did you ever make a blanket?
Never made a blanket.
Are they making blankets there?
No, but the Nez Perce, the Native Americans,
The tribe, yeah.
the tribe, a bunch of dudes are in there that are like OG Nez
Mhm.
Perce, and their grandmas made some of the original designs. They have their own opinion about Pendleton blankets,
Of course.
but they're really cool to the Native community out there. They have sweats and they allow them a lot of religious grace out there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, I want to get into because, like, it kind of transitions. And, like I said, we will do a show all about stories of being in an intense prison and some of the things that you went through. But what I do want to get into is the transition from there to the minimum security unit. It's the Fit for Radio podcast, and it's brought to you by the Stafford Hills Club. If you haven't been here, you got to check it out. StaffordHills.com. They've got everything you need, whether you're lifting weights, you're into the cardio, or you'd like a guided class. They've got everything there. Also, the saltwater pool, people doing laps with the steam coming off it at dawn. It's so nice. Or if you just want to swim on your own time, they've got you covered. And kick back and relax as we're about to see sunshine every day here soon. So Stafford Hills is your spot to get ready for that beach bod. StaffordHills.com. Because a lot of people don't know that when you go from the semi-max, to me in my mind, it's maximum security, but not like, a Russian prison, but a pretty intense prison.
Yeah.
To minimum security prison, which is almost like a giant farmhouse with a locked door that smells gross. And, I did visit there. But I always thought it was crazy when you discussed going from point A to point B. Like, so you take me from when you're in Pendleton and how they had you dressed to what happened when they pulled up at do you remember this?
Oh yeah, I remember the exact. Well, you kind of wait your whole sentence for this moment,
Mm-hmm. But
I
was just blown away that it's so.
Yeah, I made it to well, and you feel that way when you get released too. There's two different feelings that are very similar, where you just have this abundance of freedom that you didn't have access to just seconds before.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll walk you through the
Pendleton to what was the name of that next facility?
Mill Creek.
Mill Creek, which is now condemned.
Now a condemned building, all kinds of lead paint and other,
and shady behavior. But so we can talk openly about it. You're heading to the new facility, and just tell me what they do.
Yeah, so they wake you up early, and it's usually around breakfast time. So I get called for transport. So I have all my stuff in this like plastic bag. And
are you giddy?
I'm really happy, but I'm like, you're always like worried that something's going to go wrong or something.
Like the last second. Yeah. Oh no, a judge just ruled 5 more years.
5 more. Yeah. That stuff that you're being blamed for. That your cellmate did,
Yeah. Because you never know when you're going to catch a charge in there. You have to be careful so you can go home.
Yeah. So it's just a timing game, trying to stay away from certain scenarios.
Dodging trouble,
essentially. And there's plenty of idiots to get into trouble. So it's,
So you've got your gear.
Got my gear. I'm walking across the yard. Then I see a bunch of officers running up to these like metal stairs to this unit. Guy getting beat up, and there's blood literally dripping down from the grates on like 3 stories up onto the pavement that I have to walk over with my plastic bag with my stuff.
Oh my God.
And
Get me out of here.
I'm trying to get past the cops. Otherwise, I'm going to have to, it's going to affect my ability to get through the check gate because they got to deal with cleaning up this guy and getting this other guy to the hole. So I was like, get past these guys so I can get to a minimum facility. So I finally get in, do the whole black box thing, right?
They pack you up. It's like you're Hannibal Lecter.
Yep, the whole deal. And I get transported, 3 hours to Salem. And then I know where I'm going. I know the freedoms or the rumors of the freedoms that are at this facility because it's essentially just a work camp,
Mm-hmm.
And
if you're willing to work, you're gonna breathe fresh air.
Exactly, cheap labor for the city and state and all.
Beyond cheap. We'll get into that another time.
Yeah. So but I'm excited. I'm like, wow, I just walked across a pool of blood. And I'm going to go to a place where everyone's afraid to, get in trouble and sent back here and all that. So I finally get there and they take off my shackles and I'm standing in like a parking lot and I realize there's no fences.
And you have no shackles.
And I'm looking around going, wow, like I just had people like, with loaded guns and guard towers. And
5 seconds ago, really, in the grand scheme of life.
Yeah, there was a guy in the shotgun in the van, that would have shot me
all the way up to here,
all the way up to the parking lot.
Now it's fine.
Yeah, now it's fine.
Just
you back to
so black and white. It's like, oh, boom, and now it's changed. And I remember because you called me once you got to Mill Creek, and now it's cool also because now you can hear my radio show there. If you're in a work truck or whatever, like all those things are possible. I can come visit you.
Yep.
Which I think having the ability, and I could have come up there too. And I do apologize that I never came up to Pendleton, but it's like
risk your life across the straits of Eastern Oregon.
Yeah. But in a perfect world, I would have been there, but I made it a point to make it up to you when you got there so that I could come visit and sit in the same room with you. And it gets to the point where actually, and my oldest daughter, I tell her this sometime. I'm like, you've been to a prison, right?
Oh yeah,
because remember we brought her in, and
I thought that was so funny, and the officers there all listened to your show, so like I got a little bit of leniency there.
It helps you out a little,
yeah, a little bit of cred, and but not with the other inmates like that. Those guys like them,
exactly. But yeah, because when my baby came in there, they they're just making sure there's no like cocaine in her diaper and all this stuff.
Yeah. Down my grandma,
I know. And I couldn't wear jeans in there. So I'd have to go like switch into slacks because you guys wore jeans. And like, there were these weird rules where I had to change so I'd be out in the car putting on like an outfit that I hadn't worn in 5 years. Yep. And just look like a schlub when I walk in there and go back out and be such a diva that I'd change back and then drive away.
Yeah.
But while you're there, you become like the head of their work crew. Like you become like Mr. Reliable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have tattoos on my face. I don't have any tattoos. I don't have anything against them. I just don't have any, and kind of made a point not to.
Yeah. Well, I don't have them either. It's kind of rare not to. Mm-hmm. So like where you have a tattoo makes you different. Now you're different because you don't have them.
Yeah.
So, but to each their own. I think they look great on some people.
Oh, my wife has, tons of tattoos.
Yeah.
I love tattoos. Family members. I chose not to.
I'm going to get that giant hawk for you on your back. You exactly. Let me know.
Yeah. Yeah. Lower back.
Yeah. So you kind of gain cred you're well-spoken, you're articulate, you don't talk like you're deep-rooted gangster or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that probably helped.
No meth background. That's, was a big thing.
Your jaw still sits standard.
Yeah, hope so.
Yeah.
And yeah. So yeah, I ended up with this job where a lot of furniture and things get made for colleges, the Capitol building, DHS, DMV. Inmates will make this furniture and then inmates will end up delivering it across the state, guys with like 4 years or less that don't have any,
less risk of running.
Exactly. Less risk of running. No, sex crimes or anything.
Yeah. You can't be out amongst the wolves.
Exactly. Because you're going into schools, which is insane.
That is nuts. No offense to you, but your rest of your team, what are we doing?
The whole time I'm like, looking at the officer.
We shouldn't.
Yeah, we shouldn't even like be here, especially with this guy.
Can I build the desk outside and then they'll bring it in?
Right. And I'm just like, this is insane to me. But I was very grateful because I got out. But as soon as I got back on this like box truck after, installing cabinets or whatever it was, stripped naked and then sent to my bunk.
Have you go walk there naked?
Well, no, they put you in
But
this like cage and then in a room, and they have you do the, kind
the
of the
the whoop de
shuffle, so you
doo.
all spread and cough and lift and separate and the whole deal, and then you're released back into this facility with no fences.
Which is such a tough thing, because even though now you're grateful that you're not in the heavy security and with like the real troubled people, it still is degrading to have to constantly open your cheeks for people and all that stuff. Like, did you get numb to that eventually, where you're like, whatever, this is just life?
Yeah, no, I think back in the other facility, where they would, take, couple hundred people into like would look like an old school gymnasium with the wood bleachers, and they're looking for a knife or they're looking for drugs, and they just had it with everybody. So they bring everybody down and they'll line up like 70 people or 77 people on that unit, and strip everyone naked at the same time. And while everyone in the bleachers, the other couple hundred people
And
are
just
watching,
sitting there.
just sitting there
Oh God.
watching you do that, and I got to a moment where this guy kept on telling me to like spread and cough more than once. It happened like 3 times in a row, like I wasn't doing it good enough or something.
See, this would be tough for me. Like, even at the club, if there's 5 naked dudes in there in the locker room at once, I get vertigo. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't need to necessarily be there for all that.
Yeah, and he's expecting an enthusiastic cough so he can, look at me in
Yeah.
a very, vulnerable position, and I start laughing. And he didn't like that I thought it was funny, and I was just like, this
But it's
doesn't.
awkward, and so I'm laughing.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Like, it's nervous, like,
And then once I knew it like upset him, I start, kind of laughing harder. And it just turned into this big thing where, he's like, put me in handcuffs and have me sit in the corner for a while. But until, I'm like, you have like 100 people to strip search. You're going to take
Yeah.
5 minutes on each person. Come on, man.
yeah, like, let's move along already.
Yeah.
You're killing me.
But you have those moments where you feel like that they're trying to get you in a psychological game, and you're like,
Yeah.
you're not getting me anymore.
Yeah, you're trying to demoralize me, and I had decided I'm going home
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
And I think, I also want to point out something, while you're in these facilities, you make a concerted effort to work on nutrition, work on your body. You teach yourself how to play the guitar. You lean deeply into your faith, and you use these things as distractions. And I remember, I was like, oh, he's learning how to play the guitar. I hope he can do that. And you did it. Like, it was very impressive. The fact that you were proactive along the way, that you were kind of like re-educating yourself and what you needed to do and what you had access to. And I remember when I finally saw you, when I actually came to the facility, I was like, oh my God, he's huge. Like, he's a monster. And I hadn't even started my like serious push-up regimen yet. So I was like, oh my God, I got some work to do over here. Cause you were like, my size were smaller when you went in there. And then I see you and you're just like fully yoked.
Yeah, it was a rededication of my life. Like I had this moment of like, what are my priorities? I can't let this, horrific accident, just go into this, phase where I go backwards. I can't let all this, be in vain, I guess, or whatever. And I had this thing. I was like, I want to be a husband. I want to be a dad. I want to work hard. And I start looking at these, jobs and these people that I admire. And I'm like, what do I admire about them? And I had that a lot of time to reflect on that. How do I, transition? Yeah. Playing guitar and music, everything, just, focusing the front of your mind on like a mundane task, so the rest of your mind can just
fade away.
You're not listening to the shoes squeaking outside your cell with a fight when you have your headphones on and you're playing a guitar or doing something like that. So
did you find that you were happier when you got to Mill Creek because you were able to live your life a little bit more, or were you still kind of having to be on the defensive and kind of keep yourself in the tunnel?
Both, actually. Yeah, there's some times where you're like, man, I'm on this crew and these guys are smuggling this stuff. I can't say nothing. And, or
And they're going to get me written up.
exactly, or these officers have like a vendetta against, these guys that I know that I work with, and I'm going to get caught up in this. So you have this anxiety that you're going to get sent back to the place you were just at.
They could take it all away.
Or give you more time for something you had nothing to do with, like a
Mhm.
drop of some drugs, and you just happen to be on the crew, and you're like, whoa, that was
No, sorry, we charge everybody.
that wasn't it wasn't in my body.
Yeah, exactly. So during this time, you're kind of coming to the end of it. You actually met your wife while you were still there, which is kind of cool that is able to, the next phase of your life is kind of being integrated at that point. Can you tell me what it was like when you are going home, like the final day when it's time for you to actually leave?
Yeah, yeah. Let me just touch real quick on the importance of my wife in this whole situation. So we met in a crazy way. I'm playing guitar for a bunch of different church services, all kinds of denominations, religions, and
Yeah.
things like that. But this older gal was a volunteer in there, and she's like, "Hey, one day after church was like, I want you to meet my granddaughter." And I said, that's a horrible idea to talk to any man in here about that.
Yeah.
She's like, "Will you write her a letter?" The sweetest lady you ever met. And I was like, "No, there's absolutely no, and you should never ask anyone else in here to do that." And she's like, I have a feeling, kind of thing. And went that direction. And we were very reluctant. She was pestering us so much that we just essentially agreed to write each other. She was living in North Carolina. I'm living in Salem. And
In a facility.
yeah, and the agreement was we'll write as friends. And I wrote her a letter, sat in her mailbox for 2 weeks, and she didn't care. Even when she got it, she's like, "This is odd," But they have we'll go into another episode about her background. Her dad was, is incarcerated forever as a bank robber. And so it was familiar to see this letter. She has no ambition of ever writing an inmate. Probably the exact opposite. She's a Navy military gal. And so she, opened the letter and took a long time to write me back. And eventually we just started this dialogue via pen and paper. It turned into, love and all that, probably irresponsible, this and that. But we ended up getting married in there, fast forwarding to that moment of, wow, this gal's been coming to see me, for 2 years, straight. Obviously the friends and family are, she didn't even tell her family about my situation in North Carolina until like 2 years after.
Oh, wow.
After everything. So,
when you were out.
yeah, I had to tell them myself for the first time. I had no idea. It was just,
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Buckle up, guys.
Yeah, buckle up, guys. I got an interesting story for you. I'm not
Yeah.
crazy, I promise. But yeah, that moment upon release, yeah, of course, it takes longer than expected, and there's so much pressure. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm 33 years old. I have
You're about to head out with no money, nothing.
yeah, just nothing. And my wife, she's living paycheck to paycheck, bartending, and my aunt and uncle were just the best through this. And they were like, "Hey, you can live in this cabin that we originally built for your grandpa for this amount of money. You and your wife can, while you're saving up for something else." So kind of had a little plan. This amazing guy kind of mentored me throughout my sentence as well, and hired me on his construction crew. But so I had a little bit of a support system, but no idea how it's going to happen. Statistics are that I think the first one is after 3 years, like 68% of people after they get out after 3 years will go back in. Then it goes up to like 78 or something after 6 years. And then it's in the 80 something percent after 9 years. And they pound this in your head.
Yeah. But you going into this, and you don't need me to tell you this, but you weren't a criminal though.
Yeah.
So like you weren't from this. This is an isolated incident that you had. But I guess part of it is a lot of people become a criminal in 10 years of marinating in criminal milk.
Yeah, no, you're right. You know, like you're affected by it. I knew wasn't living that life or whatever at all. But I knew the system was set up to, as a resistance, no matter
Hmm.
what. So I was like, I'm going into a situation of disadvantage no matter what.
Well, and the cool thing is you get out of there and, do you remember, does somebody pick you up? They drop you off, or how does that go?
Yeah, my wife picks me up, and it was just like that surreal moment, like, wow, we're really
We're
here.
driving away.
We're driving away. You feel like Bonnie and Clyde, like, yeah, hurry up before they pull us over,
Yeah, I know, you're kind of looking over your shoulder over
Yeah,
and over.
yeah. And as you're walking out the door, you're like waiting for that moment. One more thing.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I forgot. Oh, wait, here, a little bit of small print here. Come on back.
Yeah.
Now the cool thing is you get going in construction. You actually really, I've been so proud of you. You have really done well with that, and you've built yourself up into bigger roles and not just like a grunt. And which I'm glad, because you did you made pennies for all of the work that you did while you were at Mill Creek. They're robbing you blind, but you're also doing hard labor. You're putting your body through it, and you're a strong guy, but labor's labor. So I'm glad to see that you're not just dragging sandbags at this point, because we do need you standing upright
Yeah.
at
No,
some point.
I do have a work truck in the parking lot full of tools, but I'm using them less and more of my brain. And yeah, my job now is a huge blessing. And yeah, it's hard work. I'm not, living extravagant life, but I was just so grateful that I
And
have one.
you build airplane hangars.
Yeah, yeah. The outfit that I work for primarily builds like aviation, business aviation hangars.
And that's so cool, man. And we talked for at such great length about what what you were going to do when you got out of there and what the plan would look like. And you've done such a good job of all of it, of you know not just the skills that you gained and the muscle and finding your wife, and you have two beautiful daughters, and it's such a great thing. I You sent me this message, and just to circle back on our friendship a little bit, like, it's not lost on me how special it is, because of the bond that we have, and it took a tragic event for it to go full circle. But you sent me a message on my birthday a couple of years ago, and it's actually, I'd say it's probably top three most important messages I've ever gotten in my life, and I'm just going to read it to you. Normally, I get a little choked up in doing so, but I think I can hold it together. It says, "Happy birthday, brother. You're the only person I know that I can text this early because it was 5 in the morning. Thank you for being born. You're a genuine friend that has never turned his back on a buddy. I often think of it, if you didn't stand up for me in court, and how that could have left me in prison for the rest of my life. I look at Luella and know that she is here because one friend, out of many, decided to crawl into the trench and pull his brother out with zero profit for himself. It's the hero gene, and it's a gift most don't have. Thank you. Have a great day knowing that you're an inspiration, not just in your healthy physical habits, but mainly for your loyalty and your friendship." I can't tell you, Mike, how much that means to me. Like, you know, I'm a triple girl dad. I love my girls. I would go to war for them, and I know you would for yours as well. And I see your girls, and I see how happy they make you. And this is just a result of refusing to give up. And tragic things happened, and a lot of people were affected, and we would all take it all back if we could. But I'm proud of you for not giving up. I'm proud of you for building that family and now raising those girls in a loving situation. I see how you deal with them and how it's always them first. And, you know, I don't think that it's fair for one moment to define a person. I think that you get dealt a hand and it's how you deal with it. And you, my friend, have come out on the other side of it in an incredible way. And you should be extremely proud of yourself for that. I wanted to give you kind of give you the floor for a second as we kind of wrap this up, because there's a lot of things to it. And, the podcast is only so long. And I know that we could have spent an hour on each section of this today. After what you've been through, first of all, I would say, what would you say to other young adults who are out living their life, flying by the seat of their pants, not a care in the world, you can't touch me type of a mentality? What would you say to them?
Gosh, yeah, I think about, both of my daughters, Will and Evelyn, and the same advice I would give to any young person. And I have, spoke to numerous young people, but yeah, for me is the frailty of life. When you're a young man or a young woman, you just think that there's this, invincibility, and that your actions may not have the consequences that they actually could. And just an awareness, like a spatial awareness. My whole life is pretty much dedicated to accident prevention now, within my industry. And
Your job is to keep people safe.
yeah, a safety manager. So like, like right now, there's 100 people working on our sites, right around there, and have to document and create programs and habits within those people to keep them safe. But yeah, back to the young people or anybody that was, young athletes, young, anyone in that young stage where they're transitioning, or in high school, out of college. It's there's there's not very much profit in that, staying out a little extra, I mean, kids can't even experiment with drugs anymore. They couldn't before, but especially now,
Now it's troubling.
it's troubling. It's dangerous. And just keeping up with friends, that moment where you're hanging out with friends and you're just trying to, kind of outdo each other. It's just it's a facade. And just being careful, being mindful, thinking about how, just 3 seconds can change the whole trajectory of your life, or just, putting yourself in a situation where you're not aware of what's going on around you. There could be just massive consequences to that. So I would just continue to encourage young people to call each other out. If you see something, call a friend out and say, hey, don't get in the car and drive right now. Or
Hold each other accountable.
yeah, and accountability, and just trust within friends to, hold each other accountable. Not that somebody should have held me accountable, but and this whole situation could look different because you can't play the what ifs games. But for young people to be mindful that things can happen, things will happen.
Hmm.
And if you're not careful and uh, don't look out for each other.
Yeah, and Warren Buffett once said, "Nothing good ever happens after midnight." And look back on your life, like, yeah, there's some fun moments, but really, at midnight, most people are done making memories. It's just that's when the debauchery begins. That's when people are like, let's go here and let's go here. And it just cascades because a lot of times you go to the bar, the late night bar, and you're like, okay, well, I only have a couple drinks here. But you had a couple drinks at the last place, and then you pre-funked a couple drinks at that spot. And it really starts to snowball effect and affect your thinking long term. Like when this incident went down, I think most of people in our friend group, it was a shock to understand that, we are not invincible and life is just the thinnest line that could be snapped at any point. And I just encourage people, and younger people now, they're not partying as hard, but the drugs are more dangerous. The decisions that we make couldn't be long term, and you're a perfect example of that. Now, I think you're an example of it on two fronts. I think you're an example of it as in anything can happen to anyone who gets themselves in a situation. Like you can't control everything that happens to you, but you can control the environment that you put yourself in that raises or lowers the chance of those things happening to you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You can put yourself in scenarios. I mean, just having the little sayings, nothing good happens after midnight, or Yeah, early to sleep, early to rise will make you healthy, wealthy, wise, and
Mhm.
having these little sayings,
Little mantras.
mantras that we hear from a parent or somebody they probably don't remember even telling us, but it sticks with us, and we'll hold on to it. And yeah,
Well, there's also a lesson on the back end too, because don't put yourself in situations that can get you into the muck. But also, if you find yourself in a situation, and this is where you've inspired me, is that you took the adversity and you harnessed it and you came out on top. So many people, it would have collapsed them. They'd be weird now. Like, it's interesting to me that you're still have your personality. Like, you and I went to an Oregon Duck game not too long ago, which I appreciate you taking me to that.
oh, that was pretty cool. Yeah,
It was
thank you,
cool.
Brittany, for for your
Yeah,
service.
thank you, Brittany. But basically, we had a conversation all the way down there, like almost outside of talking about this stuff, almost like we were back in time. You still have a sense of humor, you still have joy in your life, and you've done all those things without shucking responsibility for the scenario that happened. Because well, out of respect, we're not talking about names, and we're not talking about the families and all that, but that's always been the forefront of what you have wanted to make clear, that you wanted to respect the family on the other end of this, respect the legacy of the man who was lost, and at the same time, not let it define your entire story.
Exactly.
You
And
know,
everybody has a story, and you always have a choice of how you respond.
it's
And
not just about what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you.
exactly. And it's not about what happens to you. And kind of looking outward
Yeah, it's
to other
me, me,
people.
me cannot be happening. And you never did that, and I think that's commendable. So obviously, you and I, the last thing I wanted to say too is you and I always discussed, like, we didn't know this was going to be a capacity of something that we would be able to do, because I hadn't launched this podcast. I was doing my radio show, and we had talked about us speaking to youth groups and us speaking to high schools and all that, and like building out a whole assembly, kind of like a scared straight type of a thing. Like, don't get yourself into the muck and this won't happen to you. And we were really doing the legs of that while you were still in jail. So it's like you were never me, me, me. And you were like, how can I use this to keep them from getting in here? And, when you got out, you realize, I have to make money, I have to work. And you and I are having a bunch of kids and grinding to pay bills, and haven't had that chance to go and tell that story. Because the idea originally was I would MC and you would tell your story, so that I could, facilitate the crowd, and then you could deliver the mail. And I don't think that is that dream is dead. We could still totally do that, but I hope that this serves as a vehicle for people as well, to be warned
Mhm.
about the fact that we're not invincible, and that bad decisions lead to bad results, and that also, when something happens to you, don't let that be the end of the story.
Exactly.
Staple pages on the back of the book, baby. We got more to write.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, I love you, buddy. And we will have you back on in a little lighter capacity, even though the stories are intense. But a lot of the stories from in prison will be about other inmates, and also how that's associated to you. And I can't wait to discuss all the stuff with the work crews and the 9 pennies they paid you for it.
Oh man, yeah, they were brutal. And my wife was just a saint through that process. I mean, there's so many great stories we haven't got to that are they're horrible stories, but they're interesting to talk about.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Amazing, and not in the necessarily the positive mode, just amazing as in make your eyes pop out of your head. So thank you so much for sitting down with me. I know that wasn't easy, and I just want to give love to everybody who was a part of that story, for people who mourned after that. And really, this is just meant to be it's a warning to anyone that nothing's guaranteed, and to just do what you need to do to keep yourself and those around you safe. And much love. Mike Hessemer, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Drew.
Cheers.